Thank you, Jessica, for a quick and nice introduction. I'm Efat Gasimi, the Executive Director of Newcomer Centre of Peel. I will start with the land acknowledgement first and then move on to the introduction. I would like to begin our today's meeting with a land acknowledgement. As an immigrant, I begin today by respecting and acknowledging the traditional territory upon which we gather and the original peoples of Terror Island. We honor and respect the history, languages, and culture of the diverse indigenous people who call this territory home. This land acknowledgement is a first step towards reconciliation and is the work of all residents, all settlers, all immigrants to work towards decolonizing practices and bringing our awareness into action. We at the Newcomer Centre of Peel acknowledge that the land on which we gather is part of the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation territory. For thousands of years, indigenous peoples have inhabited and cared for this land, continuing to do so today. We acknowledge the territory of the Anishinaabe and other First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, past, present, and future. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties as well as the Dish with One Spoon, One Palm Belt Covenant. We are grateful to be guests on this land and have the opportunity to work with the community on this territory. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the very important knowledge dissemination of the new diaspora who came to Canada recently from Ukraine or neighboring countries. So I wanted to mention to make the conversation into the good context is, as of yesterday that I got the statistics, 700,000 applications received by IRCC and 415,000 of applications approved by IRCC. But we know that 90,000 so far Ukrainian came to Canada, and most likely they choose to stay in Ontario, more than 55–60% of them. And there are hotels in GTAH, Ottawa, and other area to just get referral from the Canadian Red Cross. And in Ontario only, I've heard yesterday that from the ministry that so far we provided 30,000 OHIP cards. This is a good number that we know exactly, at least we know that 30,000 of them are here because they applied. And then our team and other team around the other agencies, they are helping them actually to put the application together and get them. Enough of the statistical report, but I wanted to, before I introduce my colleagues from the Newcomer Centre of Peel, I wanted to thank Community Foundation of Mississauga. If they are around this table, I want to thank them because that was something that we put together as a proposal for the for part of the educational part for the Ukrainian cohort, and they approved and they gave us resources. Thank you to Community Foundation of Mississauga for supporting this project. So now I wanted to introduce our staff who are going to come to the to introduce their slides and talks and everything. So it's such an amazing, honestly, anytime I listen to them, I really enjoyed and learn more. So Yuliya is number one, coming to the to talk. Oriana is the second, Oksana number 3, and the Tetiana, and the last one is Ina. I didn't want to say more than this. You will see them and they will just tell them who they are. But thank you, my staff. Thank you, our Ukrainian. They're all from Ukraine and Russia. And then although we have 9 people working with us because we have three so up to now 3 hotels that there are full of families, Ukrainian families, but 5 of them are here today. Welcome everyone. Back to you, Yuliya. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello everyone. My name is Yuliya. I'm a Ukrainian, one of those 7 million people who had to leave Ukraine after the war began. Today, I will start the presentation about my motherland, Ukraine. Great attention is paid to history because it's one of the keys if you want to understand the reasons of current war. I hope you will find it interesting and useful, so let's start. On the first slide, you can see the state symbols of Ukraine. The Ukrainian flag consists of equally sized horizontal bands of blue and yellow. It is believed that the colors symbolize blue sky above the yellow field of wheat. The coat of arms of Ukraine is a blue shield with a gold trident. It is called Trizub. President of Ukraine is Volodymyr Zelensky. You can see his photo. He was elected in 2019. He is the 6th president of Ukraine since Ukraine got its independence. The next slide, please. Geographical position. Ukraine was internationally recognized as an independent state in 1991 when the Soviet Union dissolved. It is located in Eastern Europe and it is the 2nd enlarged country in Europe. It covered until Crimea annexation and the current war about 600,000 square kilometers. The next, please. Ukraine borders with 7 countries: Poland, Russia, Belarus, Hungary, Moldova, Romania, and Slovakia. The border with Russia is the country's longest border. The Black Sea and the Azov Sea wash Ukraine in the south. By total area, Ukraine is a bit smaller than Canadian Manitoba or Saskatchewan. The next, please. In 1991, the population of Ukraine was 52 million people, but in 2014, it decreased to 45 million people. That is still 25% more than the population of Canada. The official language, the next slide, please. The official language is Ukrainian, and you can see the Ukrainian alphabet on this slide. Ukrainian belongs to a large Slavic family of languages. In 2017, more than 2/3 of Ukrainian citizens considered Ukrainian as their native language. The next is about our capital. Kyiv is the capital of Ukraine. It is situated in north central Ukraine along the Dnieper River, which is the longest river in Ukraine. It divides Kyiv into the right bank and the left bank areas. About 3 million people live in Kyiv. It is an important industrial, cultural, scientific center in Eastern Europe. It is a very beautiful city with many historical landmarks. If you ever have an opportunity to visit it, you will love it for sure. The next is, you can see photos of 6 Ukrainian biggest cities: Kyiv, Kharkiv, Odessa, Dnipro, Donetsk, which is occupied by Russia now, and Lviv. They are very different, but each of them is unique and very, very attractive. The next slide. The most important seaports are Odessa, Mykolaiv, Kherson, and Kerch. The last one is under Russian occupation right now. Ukrainian climate, the next slide, please. Ukrainian climate is moderate. It is similar to the climate of wheat-producing regions of Canada. There are 4 seasons in Ukraine. Winters in most parts of Ukraine are cold and snowy, and in summers it's sunny and hot. Thank you for attention, and I'm passing the floor to Oriana.
Thank you, Yuliya. So, education system. According to Ukrainian constitution, access to free education is granted to all citizens. Complete general secondary education is compulsory. So the literacy rate is an estimate of 99.4%. The first higher education institutions emerged in Ukraine in the 16th century. In 2016, Ukraine had 802 universities. Next slide, please. So religion. Ukraine has the world's second largest Eastern Orthodox population. A 2021 survey found that 82% of Ukrainians declared themselves to be religious, while 7% were atheists. Orthodox Christmas is celebrated on January 7th, and traditional celebration includes door-to-door caroling, which is called the vertep. So, in the Ukrainian culture, vertep is a short play put on by carolers, which is presenting the nativity scene and other mystery plays. It's a very creative, lively, and fun tradition that emerged in the 16th century and is still carried out to this day. Ukraine celebrates Orthodox Easter, and pisanka is a traditional Easter egg. So regarding Ukrainian Easter and traditions, some families begin their Easter meal with paska, which is sweet bread, and the dyed krashenka egg, which are edible versions of pisanka. Every kid's favorite part of the morning is a game called egg battles, when two people hit their eggs together, and if someone's eggshell breaks, that person is out of the game. The person's egg that withstood all other eggs is granted luck in forthcoming time. Also, here's a fun fact regarding Toronto's Ukrainian traditions. So the Blue or West Ukrainian Festival is North America's largest Ukrainian street festival. So if you like to see these traditions in person, I highly recommend you stop by and keep an eye out for the event next September. Next slide, please. Traditional costumes. The iconic embroidered shirt or blouse, the vyshyvanka, is the most recognizable part of a Ukrainian national costume. Ukrainian embroidery varies depending on a region of origin, choices of colors, and types of stitches. Use of color is very important and has roots in Ukrainian folklore. Next slide, please. Sports in Ukraine. Football, known as soccer here, is the most popular sport in Ukraine. Andriy Shevchenko is a famous Ukrainian footballer. Ukraine has won 139 medals in the Summer Olympics and 9 in the Winter Olympics. Ukrainian boxers are amongst the best in the world. Oleksandr Usyk, the brothers Vitaly and Vladimir Klitschko, and Vasily Lomachenko are prominent Ukrainian boxers with multiple world records and titles. Economy of Ukraine. Ukraine is one of the world's most important mineral-producing countries in terms of both range and size of its reserves. In 2019, Ukraine was one of the top 10 large world producers of iron ore, steel, uranium, magnesium, titanium, and graphite. Ukraine supplies about 50% of the world's neon gas and 40% of crypto, both of which are needed for the production of semiconductors. Next slide. Ukraine is among the world's leaders in grain production, about 16 million. Ukraine is the world's leader in production of sunflower oil at 50% of the global market. Ukraine is the largest European exporter of IT services. Ukraine is one of 9 countries with a full cycle of aerospace hardware engineering and production. The largest cargo airplane in the world, Antonov AN-225 Mriya, was designed and made in 1988. Unfortunately, it was destroyed during an attack on an airfield by Russian forces in March 2020. Thank you. Now I'm going to be passing the mic to Oksana.
Hello, everyone. My name is Oksana, and I'll tell you more about Ukrainian history. So about Ukraine, it is the word from Old East Slavic, Ukrainia, and it's originally meaning the borderland. Official name of the country is simply Ukraine. It does not use the word Z, so we're only saying Ukraine. Ukraine emerged history was establishment of Medieval state of Kievan Rus. It was one of the most powerful nation in the Middle Ages and disintegrated by the mid of 12th century. In the 11th century, Kievan Rus was geographically the largest state in Europe, and the name Ukraine first appears in historical documents of the 12th century, and on historical maps, it appears on 16th century period. So during 14th and 15th centuries, Ukrainian lands fell under the rule of neighboring states. It was Lithuania and Poland at that time. Ukraine was under empires for ages. Since between the war in 1654 and 1667 between Russia and Poland, the territory of modern Ukraine was under the rule of two warring states. Eastern part of Ukraine was to come under the Russia rule for more than 100 years, and western part was under the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. From the end of 18th century to beginning of 20th century, Ukrainian lands were part of the two empires, Austrian, which later known as the Austro-Hungarian, and Russian. First independence of Ukraine. So the pathway was really difficult, and we had many tragic events. So million Ukrainians were thrown into the chaos of World War I. They witnessing the downfall of old age empires, and Ukraine made attempt to build its own nation state 1917-1921. So for the next slide, exactly in 1917, there was creation of the Ukrainian National Republic, and it was the first official attempt of Ukraine to become an independent state. In 1922, not long time after, the Bolshevik Red Army established control, and the Ukrainian Soviet Socialistic Republic was formed, and it was one of the founding republic of the Soviet Union. And then in 1930, the Russification policy started working. It was one of the form to taking away Ukrainian language and make sure no one is having their own traditions. So it got worse even then. In 1932-33, millions of people of Ukraine starved to death in devastating famine known as the Holodomor. Many of you might know that the Holodomor was man-made. It is known as the Terror Famine of the Great Regime of Soviet Ukraine, and it was caused by Soviet regime of Communist Party. So the famine was directed to the peasantry of Ukrainian peasantry, which had it was stubborn and continued to resist Soviet regime. A little bit more about that famine. So at that time, in 1932, Ukrainian harvest resulted in below average yields. However, it was still sufficient to sustain its own population. But nevertheless of that, Soviet authorities set requisition quota at impossibly high level. What they've done, they sent brigades of special agents to Ukraine, and homes were routinely searched and food was confiscated. It went to the point that people did not have anything to feed their families itself. The rural population was left with nothing to feed their own. The ensuing starvation grew even worse to the beginning of the spring 1933, but Moscow refused to provide any kind of relief. What they did instead, Soviet Union exported more than 1 million tons of grain at that time to the West during the period when 4 to 5 million Ukrainians died from hunger during the time. That was just horrible. But that's not the only horrible thing. For the next chapter, World War II. So Ukraine was an epicenter of World War II. And about 6 million of Ukrainians died between 1939 and 1945 during the World War II time. It's resulted for more than 700 cities and towns, for 28,000 villages destroyed, with more than 10 million people left homeless. For then, the next disastrous event, Chernobyl. Chernobyl, and many of you might be familiar with that word, as it was one of the 2 nuclear energy accidents rated at 7 maximum severity. It happened on April 26, 1986 at the city of Chernobyl. Another disastrous event closer to this one was similar. It was 2011 Fukushima nuclear disaster in Japan. So the initial emergency response in Ukraine for the Chernobyl disaster took more than 500 personnel, and it was a time when more than thousands of people had to be relocated from the contaminated territory. For the next slide, I will tell you a little bit more about first years of independence of Ukraine. So as you all know, Soviet Union collapsed in 1991 and Ukraine took its chance. So on August 24, 1991, Ukraine proclaimed its independence. You can see celebration on the left. That's right there, how people were just so happy to see it coming. Poland and Canada were the first countries to recognize Ukraine independence. And after the dissolution of Soviet Union, Ukraine held about 1/3 of the Soviet nuclear arsenal. And you can imagine that it was like third largest in the world at that time, and as well as the means of design and production. So on the picture, you can see the heads of the state, and it was for Budapest Memorandum. So it happened in 1994. Ukraine agreed to destroy the nuclear weapons. The leaders of Ukraine, Russia, Britain, and the United States signed the Budapest Memorandum to provide Ukraine with security assurance as a non-nuclear state. So what they did, they signed that memorandum to respect and independence and sovereignty and existing borders. They also signed that memorandum to refrain from the threat and use of force against the country. That's what was about the Budapest Memorandum. But as you know the case, today, this is not something that was followed. And as you can see for the next slide, because Russia always seen Ukraine as its integral part, it never viewed Ukrainians as independent nation. They thought that probably Ukrainians are similarly the same. They're like Russian people, but I'll tell you more. No, this is not the case. And at this point, I will give my word to Tetiana, so she will continue the presentation. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to talk about modern history, and we're going to start with Orange Revolution. The Ukrainian presidential election of November and December 2004 brought Ukraine to the brink of disintegration and civil war. In the runoff election, Viktor Yanukovych, supported by Russian Federation, officially won. Evidence of massive fraud and falsification came to light. The opposition started street protests in Kiev and other cities. After that, the Supreme Court of Ukraine ordered the election results null and void. In the second runoff, Viktor Yushchenko, the leader of opposition, wins. You can see a photo of him on a banner. Next slide. Next, revolution of dignity in modern history of Ukraine. The winner of the presidential election held in 2010 was Viktor Yanukovych, pro-Russian candidate. During his term in December 2013, Ukraine's planned association agreement with European Union was scuttled under the pressure of Moscow, just days before it was scheduled to be signed. Instead, announcement of a trade agreement with Russia. Students stepped out to the streets in protests. Police violently dispersed crowds in Kiev, followed by massive uprising against police violence. In January and February 2014, we saw 108 protesters killed and many more injured. In February 22, 2014, President Yanukovych left Ukraine and later resurfaced in Russia. Further development of this conflict led to annexation of Crimea in March 2014. Russia invaded and annexed Crimean Peninsula. Background to the conflict that in 1954, Crimea was transferred from Russia to Ukraine. After the dissolution of the USSR, Russian politicians discussed the return of Crimea to Russia. Control of the Black Sea Fleet after the USSR dissolution was a very significant issue to the Russian Federation. On the photo, you can see a soldier without any militia insignia. Russia claimed that there were no Russian troops involved initially in the conflict, and the rebels probably went to the militia store and bought the ammunition. Next slide. Reasons behind the conflict with the Russian government. The war in Donbass, followed by the annexation of Crimea in a matter of 2 weeks later in March 2014, protests by pro-Russian, anti-government separatist group arose in Donetsk and Luhansk region of Ukraine. Collectively, this region is called Donbass. They declared Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republic, DPR and LPR. Armed Russian-backed separatist groups seized government buildings throughout the Donbass. Ukraine launched the military counter-offense against pro-Russian forces in April 2014. In August 2014, Russian soldiers crossed the border in Donbass. Officially, they crossed the borders. Later, Ukraine, Russia, the DPR, and LPR signed a ceasefire agreement in Minsk in 2015, and the war turned into a frozen conflict. Next slide, please. One of the focal points of the conflict for the global community was downing of Malaysia Airline Flight 17. A civilian passenger jet, Malaysia Airline Flight 17, was shot down over a village in the Donetsk region on July 17, 2014, killing all 298 people on board. The airliner was downed by a Buk surface-to-air missile launched from pro-Russian separatist-controlled territory in Ukraine. The Buk that had been transported from Russia on the day of the crash fired from a field in separatist-controlled area, and the launcher returned to Russia after it was used to shut down the MH17. And now we are turning toward the latest development, full-scale invasion in February 2022. Russia officially recognized the DPR and LPR as independent territories from Ukraine on 21st of February 2022. They moved military forces into these territories the next day, and on February 24th, they began a full-scale invasion from occupied Ukrainian territories and across borders from Russia and Belarus. It is the largest military assault on a European state since World War II. Since the beginning of the invasion, Russian forces have occupied the Azov Sea coast, including the city of Mariupol, the entirety of the Luhansk region, half of Donetsk region, and Kherson. 2 weeks ago, Ukrainian military forces entered Kherson and gained control back over the city. In October, Russia proclaimed 4 occupied regions as a part of its country: Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. President Putin threats to use nuclear weapons and mobilize 300,000 reservists for the war in Ukraine. Since the beginning of full-scale invasion, Russia claimed that they targeted only military objects. On this slide, you can see the destruction to the civilian infrastructure. Starting September 2022, Russia changed their strategy, targeting Ukraine's energy grid, and already destroyed 50% of the Ukrainian energy infrastructure. In recent weeks, millions of Ukrainians have intermittently been left without electricity, heating, and water. Next slide. The war have caused the largest refugee crisis in Europe since World War II, with over 7 million Ukrainians fleeing the country. Ukrainians flee to neighboring countries, including Russia. They're evidence of forceful take. Next, we would like to show you a short video called I Am Ukraine.
Hello.
So sorry, it seems that there is a difficulty, but I believe it will be, let me just try to go again.
Hello, world.
Like, I will take 1 second because it was just playing and for some reason it stopped. One moment. I'll just try to do it one more time, see what's going on. Unfortunately, it does not want to go. What I was suggesting.
Oksana, I'm sorry to. I think it was going to play when you just let it play without sharing the whole screen, and
Let's
it's
try.
visible for all of us. So if you just want to try that again, it may work because I
Let's
noticed that it stopped when you were trying to share the whole screen. So maybe just the small screen will work. Just
Okay.
Hello, world. I am Ukraine. I wanted to tell you about myself so we could get to know each other better. On a warm summer day on August 24th, 1991, I was born. I'm only 30, but my roots are strong, extending deep into history. My ancestors were wise and brave and instilled in me a rich culture that shaped who I am. I have my own language, my own traditions, my own cuisine. I have seas and meadows, rivers, deserts, fields, and forests. I am a beautiful woman. And my children are strong, brave, talented, smart, witty, creative, friendly, and free in spirit. I am proud of them, just as every mother is proud of her children. Proud of their inventions, their achievements, their creativity, and their diligence. Yes, I have more than 40 million of them, and like in every large family, they did not always find a common language, but our happy moments always outweighed the bad. All my years have cultivated in them a love for freedom and a desire to be free. But now, war has fallen on my family. forces are trying to destroy me and my children's freedom, to crush it forever. As in past generations, we faced severe trials. Dark times have fallen upon us again, and my children are forced to protect us, their homes and their families, which they do skillfully despite the difficulties, because we are a real family, united together, supporting each other with our bravery and strength. Today, we fight, but we're not afraid. That's not how we were raised. We will stand, I know it. My wounds will heal, and my children will live peaceful lives once more. My name is Ukraine, and I thank you, world, for your support. We will persevere, and when this is all behind us, I'll invite you for a visit. See you soon.
Thank you again for watching this video. It's always, so emotional. And I would like to pass the floor to Inna. She will be telling you more about how do we serve Ukrainians in our agency and at the hotel premises. Inna?
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Oksana. It was very lovely and touching video. In my part of presentation, I'm going to be talking about special resettlement programs for Ukrainian nationals in Canada. As you know, Canada is committed to supporting those who are affected by Russian invasion of Ukraine. And measures that were put in place are priority processing of Canada-Ukraine authorization for emergency travel applications. And later I will tell you statistical data about it. Also increasing newcomer services for Ukrainians arriving in Canada. As probably many of you know, Ukrainians come here as open work permit holders, and they do have access to RCC funded programs available. And NCP is a perfect example of organizations that open the doors for all Ukrainians, all Ukrainians coming to Canada. Waiving application fees. So many immigration-related applications, they do not have to pay for those applications. For example, work permit applications, work permit renewal, they don't have to pay fees for those applications. Also, government provides free temporary housing and emergency financial support. Probably you heard in news that Ukrainians get one-time financial assistance just to support them establish themselves after arrival. And also some of them come here because they were supporting free flights to Canada. So as June 28, 2022, Canada has devoted $320 million in response to humanitarian crisis. And just to support emergency health services, protection, life-saving essentials such as water, medication, sanitation, food, and such. And Efat already mentioned some statistical information. So by Immigration, Refugee, Citizenship Canada, 689,000 QED application has been received, 420,000 been approved, 70,000 of Ukrainians arrived to Canada by land through the US border, 100,000 arrived in Canada by air. Like, you can easily find the statistical information on the immigration website. Some of the Ukrainians who coordinated, who participated in pre-arrival survey, they have chosen Winnipeg, Calgary, Vancouver, and Montreal are the final destination. Majority of the respondents who participated in the survey intend to make Toronto and GTA as the final destination. Also, I wanted to share with you a statistical report that we got from Toronto. So it's been identified that majority of Ukrainians who come to Canada fell into basic listening, speaking, reading, and writing skills. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to be talking about NCP and how we structure our work with displaced Ukrainian nationals. Many of you probably partner with us if you work in Peel region, in Halton region. Newcomer Centre of Peel, if you do not know us, we are a multi-service charitable nonprofit organization that actually assists newcomers, refugees, displaced Ukrainian nationals, individuals, and families in settlement and integration within Peel region and beyond. As Efad mentioned earlier, we provide services for displaced Ukrainian nationals on site, as well as we've been working since war started in different hotels, Hampton Inn, Country Inn, Quality Inn, and Radisson. The total number of Ukrainian nationals who came under QAED program and received services at NCP, it was 1,065, and approximately 800 of them were served in the hotels. And usually Ukrainians meet our lovely Ukrainian-speaking counselors you already met, Oriana and Oksana. Usually they coordinate comprehensive needs assessment and inform them about everything what is related to settlement, to the settlement. Like they usually, based on their needs, they help them to create a settlement action plans, which helps them integrate into Canadian society. So as you can see on the left-hand side, pretty much Oriana and Oksana are experts in those areas, and they can provide them with orientation about everything what is mentioned here. When it comes to employment, it's vital for Ukrainians to secure employment. As you know, they just get one-time financial assistance. And you already met Tetiana. Tetiana, she is employment counselor who assists the Ukrainians with the lower language proficiency to help them with everything related to the job search, like starting with creating resume from scratch and so on, like all job search aspects she covers. For Ukrainians who have a higher level of language proficiency, we have a labor market access for newcomers program, which is 8-week employment training program, which has a co-op component. And again, it's a very comprehensive program, usually has 2 parts. In one part, participants learn about everything what relates to job search. And then in the second part, they usually take a part in like they work in different companies, they having the co-op going on. It's a very successful program, and many people just very successful, able to find valuable employment after completion of the program because it aligns with their skills and qualifications. Having said that, like many Ukrainians actually, they have intentions to start up their own business, and Global Business Center comes into play. Also, I wanted to highlight we have a very important program. It's called Rural Employment Initiatives for it's open for everyone, like for newcomers as well as for Ukrainians who wants to relocate to different parts of GTA and beyond and in Ontario. So usually rural employment staff, what they do, organize bus tours, virtual programs, and they are hosting spotlights about different counties in Ontario, and also they organize hiring events and job fairs. So as a result, like with Ukrainians and Ukrainian individuals and families, we used to work with some of them. made a decision to relocate. They were able to find housing, which is a big issue nowadays, and they were able to secure employment. English language training. So many of you, I'm sure that you know that like language instructions for newcomers to Canada program is available, and we offer daytime, evening time classes, as well as part-time and full-time. And our instructors are dedicated and help because language proficiency skills is the key for successful integration. As you know, like individuals who have children and attend LIN classes, children have ability to, like they're able to attend Care for Newcomer Children program, which is free for them. And when it comes to work, when we work in the hotels, we have early childhood educators who come with us, and they do have a program. It's called Care for Displaced Children. So usually while parents are very much focused on different settlement related, like on working on the settlement related concerns, children like usually occupied by our professional early childhood educators. They just do different, like they just like have fun art activities. They have some language training. Also, they usually got entertainment and as well as some educational piece. As you can see here, we have walk and talk sessions. Like usually it was happening during summertime. So pretty much parents are usually attend orientation session, coordinated by settlement team, and children just usually work with early childhood educators. Settlement workers in schools, we call it Swiss department, and you met Yuliya. Yuliya is a part of the Swiss team, and usually students, Ukrainian students in primary, middle, or high school usually feel lonely, and they're not really much familiar. They're not familiar with educational system in Canada. So, and role of settlement workers in school to provide them with orientation about like educational system we have in place. Community connections program, like it's open for youth, adults, and older adults, and like pretty much for Ukrainians who feel isolated, homesick. This program is available for them to help them to feel welcome and integrate into Canadian community. A volunteer program is also part of our organization, and without help of volunteers, we wouldn't be able to do our work. They just help us with like provide us administrative support, as well as help with interpretation, translation, because we have influx of Ukrainians who come to GTA, as you know from statistical reports. Challenges. So for those who works with the Ukrainian nationals, you know that affordable long-term housing, it is a huge issue we encounter in our practice. And Ukrainians face unaffordable housing prices, lack of supply, and currently we notice that landlords very often they have no idea even when the apartments will be available in the near future. So it makes our work very difficult. When it comes to employment, it's tied closely to language proficiency, because I said earlier that majority of Ukrainians who come here, they have a lower language proficiency. At the same time, probably what you learned from Oriana's presentation, 80% of them have post-secondary education, highly educated, skillful, and due to the lower language proficiency, they are unable to secure employment that aligns with their qualification and skills. Which makes it difficult. But if people, if Ukrainians come with a higher level proficiency and then they became a part of labor market access program, very often they're able to secure stable, well-paid employment. Many Ukrainians also, not many, but some of them actually come with health conditions, and it takes them time to learn about our medical system, finding a family doctor, for example, or to find a specialist, or also I can say when we're talking about financial struggles, for example, cost of prescribed medication is very high for them. When it comes to financial struggles, what we see in our practice, very often entire income goes towards rental pay, which needs to be only 30% of household income. And again, many of them been exposed to traumatic events back home and overcoming war trauma. Like I will provide you with example. We've been working in a hotel, and we were very happy and excited about Canada Day, for example. And one lady said, like, we really love Canada. We're very excited. However, when we hear like sounds of explosion or loud sounds, like we are terrified. And children just like, usually just like as soon as they have a loud sound, they just lie down on the floor just to be protected. So, and it means that they just need a lot of support. And we do have some services available for them when it comes to mental health support. So in the last part of our presentation, I will provide you with how to work with displaced Ukrainian nationals if you do not know how to, or if you've never been working with them in the past. So we follow in guidelines provided by Dr. Yuliya Chimiris, who is a clinician scientist, and she works for KMH. So she suggests to use a lead formula where L stands for listen, E stands for emphasize, and A stands for ask, and D stands for direct. So when you work with displaced Ukrainian national with Ukrainian, so active listening is very important in a field, in the social service field, and listen to understand concern differences, and person-based approach, not cultural-based approach, is more appropriate. Emphasize, so it's very important validation of feelings that clients may have, like they may have sense of frustration or lost someone, or hopelessness. If you wanted to understand the situation better, like you can ask direct question. You don't have to, do not make assumptions like they should know better, because they do not know, they new in this country. And guidance is very important when you work with newcomers, with displaced people, and like general guidance, for example, how to use public transportation or how to locate food bank nearby is very helpful. And when you work with Ukrainians or with newcomers, you should start where a client is, not where you think they should be. Remember about that your social location can be very different from the client you work with. And again, remember about privileges you have. I know that Ukrainians in our practice use direct, clear communication, and their communication style can be very different. They really much appreciate if you provide them with some information about like a common knowledge, like what is appropriate in Canadian culture, what is not appropriate in Canadian culture, like values we have, like diversity, human rights, dignity, acceptance of differences and such. And they can, like when you work with Ukraine, they can bombard you with the tons of issues they have. It's ideal if you focus on most pressing issues, more urgent issues. And again, at the end of the day, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have many resources. We have many service providers, and so at this point, like if you need any help, you always can reach out to us or other community organization if you need help. And please keep in mind when you are dealing with Ukrainian nationals, they may have mental health concerns, or they've just probably been exposed to traumatic events back home. And it's very important to be empathetic at this point of time. And this part, it concludes our presentation. Thank you so much for listening to us. And we just have, I think, some time left for Q&A. If you have any questions, we are happy to answer your question. Thank you.
And if I can, I would just add, we really like to be in here with you today. We really like to share our emotions. If you hear our voice troubling sometimes, don't think it's because, we don't know what we're saying. It's just because of lots of emotions. And all of our backgrounds that you see behind Inna, behind me, behind Yuliya, they are all from Ukraine. So different seasons are changing, and they're colorful and they're nice. So we hope, because it's coming closer to the Christmas season, that all families would have peaceful, warm, and nice Christmas, and Ukraine will be back to its normal, nice, beautiful picture. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Afat, and to all the presenters from your team. This was a very moving presentation, and I think we can all relate and feel a lot of compassion for the situation, and also it gives us motivation for supporting the Ukrainians who are arriving to Canada. So thanks so much for the guidance as well in the presentation. I think you'll see in the chat box a lot of thank yous as well. And I'm going to open it up for questions now. There was some information shared in the chat box as well, but maybe if you want to put in the chat box, or if you want to raise your hand, we can field some questions as our session goes to 10:45. Oh, so there was a question, sorry, about, are Ukrainians eligible for ODSP, so Ontario Disability Support?
I can speak to it, unfortunately not.
Okay, thank you so much. I know there was an earlier question. I'm just, if someone wants to, I guess there was a question about PowerPoints. And so I believe we'll be sharing that. And thank you so much again for all the effort in putting together such a beautiful presentation. And we'll also be sharing the recording as well. So I'm happy to share that on behalf of Newcomer Centre of Peel. We also have in our chat box a survey to provide feedback. I know there's probably going to be a lot of positive remarks, and this is your chance to share, because I think these types of sessions are so helpful to learn about the history and culture, and really help to improve our service to those who arrive. So this was such a helpful session. There was a question, do you have a list of resources in Ukraine for landed Ukrainians to help family back home? So I think resources in Ukrainian, I believe, to help those who are back home. So I think as IRCC moves towards family reunification, there will be more information that we'll be sharing, and we can definitely share with this group. But maybe I'll turn to the group at NCP, as there was questions about pre-arrival as well. But does someone want to add to that question?
I may. So what we do recommend, we do receive emails from outside of Canada. More in depth, we can add a help person once they are arriving. However, we can provide general guide and let them know what to expect, so they would be ready to come, and then they connect with us once they're here. And just want to add, I see one question about Healthy Smiles and senior dental plan as well. Yes, they are eligible.
Perfect, that's great. Jimmy, I see you've come off mute. Do you want to ask your question?
Yeah. Actually, I have a well. Anyway, I wrote my experience on my chat. I had a couple of Ukrainian clients approach us by email, and I have no idea how they found our agency. But anyway, we tried to help, and then we connected to that agency in Toronto. But we tried many times, but no response from them. Well, anyway, the problem is okay. I remember one Ukrainian client emailed us, and he said he's still in Europe. I forget which country. I think he already left Ukraine, and he asked for some financial assistance to buy flight ticket to Canada, and at that time. Eventually, we found out that he is applying for the UACP, something like that, right? The permit to come to Canada, and then but anyway, I don't know how he got the money, and he got the flight to Montreal. But this experience, it was a bad experience because that agency never respond to us, never respond to that client still in Europe. But we find out there's one last resort that time is to refer the client to the embassy in Canada, right? The Ukrainian embassy in Canada. Probably that might be one resource they can approach them to find out how they come to Canada. Would you have any suggestion in future if similar cases happen again? How can we get help to help those Ukrainians come to Canada?
Mm-hmm. I think there are a number of offers from the Newcomer Centre of Peel directly to help that particular client. So feel free to follow up with some of those links in the chat box. A few websites that I'll also mention, since you mentioned Toronto, there is a website called torontoareahelps.ca, and that's for the broader GTJ, and it provides information of how to reach different organizations, regional municipalities who are supporting as well. And also 211 also is supporting in terms of coordination and is being kept up to speed on the agencies that have Ukrainian, Russian, and Polish speakers. So that's another resource to support. Afat or others, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, one of the big issue is after they arrive Canada, they are looking for a place to settle down, right? Yeah, there's a big housing demand here. I don't know how we can solve this issue.
So may I say something? When they arrive if they come to Pearson Airport, there are tables and tents from the Canadian Red Cross and also from the Ukrainian National Congress. And there is another table that, they all, when they arrive, they see that tent of Red Cross and the other tables, they will register there, and Red Cross will send them to at least 7 days, exactly from the Pearson Airport, 7 days to the hotel that considered for the Red Cross. And then from Red Cross, after they finish 7 days and they are, because of the COVID test, so they are okay. And then they move out to the hotels that IRCC and Regional Peel, both of them are funding. And there are 3 of them right now in Mississauga. They move, we don't refer them. It's not us that we refer them. It's a Red Cross, is an agency that do the referral. They come to the hotels, and then we go. We are in the hotel, on the ground, maybe every day, every other day. So we will meet them in the hotels, And then from there, we just help them to open their bank accounts first. The first things we have to do it because they have to get the financial assistance from the federal government, $3,000 for the adult, $1,500 for the children, and then move on to the OHIP, social insurance number, housing, employment, link classes, ESL classes, enrolling children in the high school, schooling system, all those things that comes after. We don't do the referral. So Canadian Red Cross is doing it. I hope I answered your question.
There was a question in the chat regarding if people coming under CWAT are applicable and they're allowed to get Ontario Work. So they are allowed to get it, but there's requirements. They have to have a certain amount in their bank account. I believe it's about less than $1,000. And also they would be only able to apply for the emergency assistance. So it's a total of 4 payments. So it's just a temporary support. It's not going to be a continuous financial help by Ontario Works.
Great. And there was a question also about child benefits. Does someone want to expand on that piece?
So they will be eligible after 18 months staying here. So when they stay, because as I mentioned before, displaced Ukrainian nationals, they are open work permit holders. They need to be here for 18 months. And then after 18 months of physical presence in Canada, they have right to apply for Canada Child Tax benefits. I also have seen a question if settlement workers work in a Peel Discrete School Board. Yes, they do. And I mentioned Yuliya, part of the Swiss team. She can speak more about it. She works closely with 2 school boards in Peel.
Super, that's so great. In terms of financial assistance, I believe there's the one-time financial assistance as well federally. So that's another opportunity for some support. Sorry, if you don't mind repeating the schools, that would be great for the Ukrainian speaking.
Yeah, so we have a Swiss team who works closely with Peel Discrete School Board and Dufferin Peel Catholic Discrete School Board. So Yuliya, part of the team, and she works closely with school social workers and teachers who need assistance, and as well as Oriana very often works with different school boards just to help students to navigate system, like our educational system. Yeah, so very often they invited to school to provide orientation to students who are newly arrived to the region.
Jessica, thank you. Jessica, a school, Peel District School Board is the largest school board I think in Canada. There are more than 250 schools, but we can cover only 40 to 45 schools, which is the highest schools, middle schools, and elementary schools. So 40 of them in Mississauga, actually not even in Brampton, all in Mississauga, we have, people can access all the teachers, ESL teachers, principals, vice principal, counselors. They know us and they refer to us. And Yuliya right now is here, and Oriana also. Both of them are available anytime if there is anything they needed to help kids in the schools.
And if it's okay, I will just add one more thing. So if even school does not have Ukrainian speaking settlement worker, we do have our English or other languages speaking settlement workers. They do connect those families with appropriate languages. So we do provide services over the telephone, email, Zoom, and if it's possible, we go there. So for example, Yuliya would be connected once there's a family and that school does not have their own settlement worker who speaks Ukrainian language. So we would accommodate that issue as well. Thank you.
Perfect. And I see Joanna also mentioned about the Dufferin Peel board. So maybe we can put a link around welcome centers for the school boards into the chat box. So thanks, Yuliya has put her contact information in the chat box. So Jenya, hopefully that helps you. And I also want to ask a question myself. I've heard about Ukrainians not recognizing dual citizenship. I wondered if that's the case and how that the implications for that for those who may be considering staying in Canada longer. Do you have any insights on that piece? Because I think it's important for settlement workers to be aware so that they're not providing advice that they may not have that full picture.
I can add to that. So because I'm Ukrainian myself, yes, we do not recognize, at the moment, we do not recognize dual citizenship. However, all Ukrainians, they are staying right now, they're not permanent residents. They are temporary foreign workers who are staying with a valid work permit for 3 years. So this is no implications to nowhere. And then unless they decide, and many of them, they would decide to stay and apply through the immigration programs, they would become permanent residents, which again, permanent residency, it's not the citizenship yet. And if they decide, or they made decision at the moment to become Canadian citizen, they would be able to make the decision at the time and see what maybe things will change in Ukraine themselves as well. So we will work with that moment when it's there.
That's so helpful. Thank you so much. There was a question about supporting Ukrainians who reside in Halton. Is that support that Newcomer Centre of Peel? And I know there are some agencies here, such as HMC Connections, who are in Halton. So I would say there is, and HMC Connections, if you want to put your contact information in the chat box, feel free. But I'll open that question up to Newcomer Centre of Peel as well.
I'm sure there is a organization in Halton and also London and Halton, and yeah, they are sitting around the table, but I don't remember who is that, but there is because Ukrainian also reside in that city too. We refer them to Halton.
Yeah, if I can just speak, here I can see Natalia is also attending. Natalia, okay, you're waving and she has her camera on. So we are one of the organizations in Halton that also serves Ukrainian, HMC Connections. And I understand also the center, I don't see Alex here, but he also, the Center for Skills also serves Ukrainian allies is there. So to my understanding is that two organizations that at least have Ukrainian speakers on board. So either way, you can refer them to us. Again, with the same challenges that you are mentioning, housing.
Yes.
Of course, is the biggest. And then sometimes our hands are really tied. We did have a program that is ongoing actually, but is closed for new entries. And I can see my colleague Rima Diwali is here, who is right now coordinating the program. In coordination with the Halton region, we have already 50 families who have been assigned to a unit. And then we are continuing with the wraparound services. But of course, the inventory was limited to 50 units. Other than that, we continue receiving the requests, sometimes from overseas, sometimes from people who are moving provinces, the same issues that you guys were mentioning. But with open hearts, we are helping them in whatever capacity we have. So yeah, thank you.
Super. So I see we're at 10:45. So there's some contact information in the chat box. And if there are any questions, we're going to be sending out an email to all the participants of this session. And feel free to add your question in response, and we'll be sure to direct it to the appropriate people who can respond. So thank you everyone for such a wonderful, and really, I think this sheds so much light on the situation in Ukraine. So thank you so much, Afat and your team, for such a beautiful and well-presented presentation. Thank you so much. Have a great morning, everyone.
Bye-bye.